Before we get into today's episode, let's talk about something that rarely gets discussed in direct primary care: sustainability. Not just clinical sustainability, financial sustainability. DPC gives you autonomy, but autonomy without financial clarity becomes stress in disguise. Cash flow, owner pay, hiring timing, tax strategy, these aren't afterthoughts, they're what protect your freedom long term. That's why this month's conversations are supported by Osprey CFO, a finance team that specializes in working with DPC practices and understands the recurring membership model. If you're building a practice that's meant to last, your numbers have to support it. Osprey CFO handles the financial infrastructure so you can stay focused on patients and growing your practice. Now let's get into today's episode. Direct primary care is an innovative, alternative path to insurance-driven healthcare. Typically, a patient pays their doctor a low monthly membership and, in return, builds a lasting relationship with their doctor and has their doctor available at their fingertips. Welcome to the My DPC Story podcast, where each week you will hear the ever-so-relatable stories shared by physicians who have chosen to practice medicine in their individual communities through the direct primary care model. I'm your host, Marielle Concepcion, family physician, DPC owner, and former fee-for-service doctor. I hope you enjoy today's episode and come away feeling inspired about the future of patient care, direct primary care.
I was no longer willing to sacrifice not being able to spend the time that my patients deserved in order to individualize each patient's healthcare delivery and helping each patient to be the best physically and mentally that he or she could be, because I felt as though the fee-for-service system was more focused on the number of patients you were seeing a day versus the quality of the care that was being delivered to each patient. My name is Dr. Victoria Leventis-Shew, the owner and founder of Victory Family Medicine in Columbia, South Carolina, and this is my DPC story.
She was working 20 hours a day. Her supervisor was online at 3 a.m. right alongside her, and nobody thought that was a problem. That was the moment Dr. Victoria Leventis-Shew knew the system was never going to change, so she had to. Dr. Leventis-Shew is the founder of Victory Family Medicine in Columbia, South Carolina, a micropractice she built from scratch without a safety net after years of fee-for-service medicine left her unable to be present for her patients or her family. This is a story about what financial sustainability actually looks like when you're starting from zero, building slowly on purpose, and choosing depth over scale. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Leventis-Shew to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I am thrilled to be here.
I will say that for those of you who are not watching the visual, Victory is with nice wings in the back of Dr. Leventis-Shew right now. And definitely we are going to be celebrating her victories as a DPC physician. But also we're in this month of March where we're talking about sustainability. And I think this is so helpful to hear your perspective, given that you've been open for multiple years now.
I know, it's exciting. I can't believe it. It's gone by really fast. So I can't believe it. It's great for me and my patients.
Tell the audience when you opened your clinic.
So July is when I kind of came up with the name and launched the practice. And then I signed up my first patient in October of 2022. So I had signed the sublease here and then kind of had it built out so that it would work best and flow best for patients. And then started signing patients up soon after. So
there was a significant time that you were working in a different model. And given that financially, DPC can be considered quote unquote risky for a lot of us if we're going from a salary to then 0 patients, in some people's cases, 278 patients in other people's cases. Where were you specifically financially when you were thinking about doing something other than fee-for-service medicine?
So, I mean, definitely that was one of the things that held me back the longest. I was terrified of opening a private practice, and that had never crossed my mind. But honestly, it had gotten to the point where at one point in time, I was working, and I'm not kidding you, 20 hours a day. And I'm not exaggerating, just trying to keep up with the administrative duties. And really, that's when I said, I may be making a sufficient amount of money, and that's great, but I have no time to enjoy, excuse me, my friends and family. And my life is just working. That is it. And I just was not going to accept that to be my future. So my husband and I sat and talked about it for many, many, many months. And he said, look, I mean, you're not yourself. You're not able to participate in the things that bring you joy and build the relationships with those around you and do the hobbies and interests that you've had all your life. And you're just working all the time. And it was like the minute I got back home from the clinic, I would just get back on the computer. And that just to me was not sustainable long term. And that's when I said, I'm going to have to make a change. And if I'm going to stay in family medicine, the only way I'm going to do that in direct patient care is if I do direct primary care as this model. So, I mean, really, this is what has kept me in family medicine, the direct primary care model, quite frankly.
So powerful. Thinking about your life over the time that you had in fee-for-service, I'm wondering because at the time you made the jump to open Victory Family Med, your kids were 6 to 9 years old. You have 3 little ones.
Right.
Yep. When it comes to your experience pre and post kids as a physician in fee for service, what was that transition like for you when it came to work demands that your job was putting on you? And how did you handle those as you had one child, 2 children, and then 3 children?
Right. Well, yeah. My husband and I'm going to back up a little bit. So we dated for many, many years, but he was in the Navy. We weren't in the same zip code for a while. I was going to residency in Columbus, Georgia. He was going to MCG for occupational therapy school. So we knew we were going to get married. But when I completed my residency in 2010, and then he completed his training, we moved here to Columbia, South Carolina. Shortly after that, we got married, and 5 weeks later, I was pregnant. So I had my kids like really fast, but like back to back to back, because I was a geriatric pregnancy.
Oh boy.
Which gotta
Oh
love that
boy.
term. But anyway, so I'll tell you where I was working at the time. I worked through all three of my pregnancies. So they were very understanding and they knew I was growing my family. But yes, I definitely had a mind shift. We started with in-home care for the kids initially, which made me feel a little bit better knowing that they were at home being cared for. Obviously, I would rather have been there. It was difficult though as they got older and the kids were aware of my absence, which I tried to be at home as often as I could and work on my administrative duties at home. But then you're not really fully present when you're doing that. You're physically there, but mentally you're not 100% in the room. And after my third child, when I went back to work at the same place where I was, I actually worked part-time. It was an FTE with another physician. So I would work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, one week when she would work Tuesday and Thursday. And then the next week we would rotate. So that was helpful. But it was really when my oldest got to be 4 and 5. And when the kids, as they start to have activities and you want to be there, you want to be present, I felt like I was constantly having to choose between I can either go do this activity with my family and be there to support them. But then when I do that, I felt like I was letting my patients down because patients were booking appointments like 6 months out. So I wouldn't know about activities 6 months in advance. So I felt like it was a constant tug of war. And I was being pulled in two different directions and not being able to excel in either role, basically.
Yeah. And just hearing about that, and those of us who've lived that duplicitous life, or sometimes more than just two hats that we wear, like you're
Right.
trying your best in all the worlds that you're trying to be your best in. It's really it absolutely is a struggle. I'm wondering, when it came to you eventually working 20 hours a day, did the company that you worked for have admin changes? How did the push to not be not okay with a physician working that amount of hours happen?
Well, I think really the tipping point was when, so the way this facility was set up, most of us would be on Microsoft Teams on one monitor while we were doing our work on a second monitor. So I had an office space set up at home to mirror that. And you get into the habit of pulling up Microsoft Teams just to be up there while you're doing your work. Well, it was about, I don't know, 3 in the morning, one morning when I was working on something that it was administrative type tasks. And I noticed that my direct supervisor, who's the admin person above me, the supervisor, was on there too and messaged me, "What are you doing up this late?" And I thought, I mean, exactly what you're doing, and you're okay with it. So it's never going to change. I mean, just knowing that that has always been accepted, that's the way it is. The administrative people that can make decisions to help improve efficiency and reduce the administrative load are fine with it the way it is. So just knowing this is never going to get better. So I have to make a choice. Do I want to stay in the comfort of a salary job with excellent benefits and be mentally and physically miserable? Or do I want to take this extremely scary, terrifying leap into entrepreneurship and reclaim some of my time while continuing to deliver the best care I can to patients? Because I never compromised, no matter what system I was working in. I never would compromise the care that I was giving my patients, but I was having to trade off my time and the time with my family in order to give my patients the care and the time that they needed in person during those appointments, but also keep up with all the other metrics and the boxes you're trying to check every single day in that standard fee for service model.
Yeah, I'm a person who's a sucker for visuals, and I just picture like a rubber band being stretched to the point of breaking, and you don't break, but you sure as heck want to, or you sure as heck are feeling you're about to. And so
Right.
I think about the pressure release of not having to stretch yourself so thin, but still being able to be a mom, still being able to be yourself, still being able to be a doctor. All of these things. This is coming off of the interview with Dr. Matthew Hitchcock, and it just makes sense when you are relieving the extreme pressures that are put on us, and especially like you are sharing, when people who are non-physicians are the ones telling us and putting loads on us, that it's like, how is this even good for anyone's health, especially physicians? When it comes to you being in this moment where you're working at 3 o'clock in the morning with your supervisor in tandem, and you then decide to leave that life behind, what was your transition period like?
So I had actually already started thinking about opening a direct primary care practice prior to that particular position. And I had let the administrative people know that. So, and they knew that I was trying to pay down some of my school loans before opening a private practice. But my goal was to be there for quite a while before I opened a private practice. So I had already started thinking about it. And that was A lot of thanks. I have to give a huge shout out to Dr. Melissa Boylan of Noretta Family Medicine. I had never heard of direct primary care until we were actually working in the system together at different practices, but in a fee-for-service model. And we had a group of us female physicians under the umbrella of that corporation. We would go out to eat once a month together. We all worked at different primary care practices within that system, but we would meet and just have dinner together once a month. And during one of the dinners, Dr. Boylan mentioned, I'm thinking about opening a direct primary care model, and I had never heard of it. So she was telling us about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could never open my own practice ever. But hearing her transition from the fee-for-service model and opening her own direct primary care practice, and she opened it in, I think it was summer 2020 is when she opened hers. Just seeing her do that and just the encouragement she had, and she's the one that I'm pretty sure she's the one that told me about your podcast, actually. And I started listening because I owe it to you too, really, because I listened to as many of the episodes as I possibly could. If I didn't have somebody in front of me I was talking with, I was listening to your podcast and just hearing that we all were going through very similar struggles and making very similar sacrifices for systems that really did not value what we were bringing to the company. And that's what started getting me thinking, maybe I can do this. And that night, when I realized where I was at, was never going to improve. Just thought, I can't keep doing this. And they say the grass is always greener. It may be greener on the other side, but it's just as hard to mow. I didn't want to do a lateral move because I felt like I worn many hats. I've worked in the Columbia area as a family medicine physician since 2010. And I just felt like maybe I would get paid a little more if I go to this other place, but I'm going to be in the same toxic system. I was like, I cannot do that anymore. And I could see how it was hurting patients even. And I just thought, if I'm going to stay in medicine and be delivering care to patients, this is the only way I'm going to do it, or else I'm just leaving medicine.
Yeah.
It had just gotten to that point. So just having the support of the other physicians around me that were transitioning into private practice, and then learning more about the direct primary care community and reading the books that are out there, and just seeing how encouraging the community is and how supportive the community is, I felt, okay, I'm not going to be alone in this, and I'm not the only one doing it, and I'm not the only one that has the same fears surrounding doing it. So just knowing that I had that support was very encouraging to just take that next step.
Having a transition where you don't feel alone going into that transition is definitely a thing that I find has helped a lot of people, including myself. That's what I got from the guests that I interviewed on this podcast before I opened. So I think it's definitely great food for thought if people are thinking about, I am scared, because talk to another person about that fear, because there's other people who've had that fear that you're thinking about out there as well. When you mentioned your school loans and thinking about a strategy to pay them off faster, what words of advice would you give to someone who is thinking about, I would love to do DPC, but I can't because I have student loans?
I would say get a really good financial advisor and ask around your friends and colleagues that are in similar or have been in similar situations, and find out who has helped them, and then try to establish a relationship with a professional relationship with that financial advisor. Because I will readily admit that neither my husband nor I are great with finances. So it really helps to have somebody on the outside that can really look at all the numbers, money in versus money out, and to let you know these are going to be your risks. This is where you need to be to get to the point that is your goal. So I just think having that guidance, really somebody that has that knowledge and training. I know there are some physicians that are able to do all that on their own. I'm not one of them, and I definitely know what my shortcomings are. I can admit that. And so finding a financial advisor, I think, is huge. And then making sure you stay on top of all your what money you're putting into the business, what money's going out. Of course, I was just talking to one of my patients. I feel like every time I turn around, something happens, like the tankless hot water heater goes out, or now we have squirrels in the attic that have taken up residence. So there's always something that comes up, but having somebody that helps to prepare you for those those moments, it helps. Again, so building a team around you is huge. I mean, even though I'm a micropractice and I have no staff, I certainly have a team. I don't have anybody here in the office, but I do have a team of people that help me in other ways.
Absolutely. Takes that community for sure. Now, what was your financial investment that you put into your practice or that you had saved for your practice? And how long did you plan for that financial nest egg to carry you into the future?
I could pretty much write a book on the things that you shouldn't do. But to be honest, I had gotten to such a point of really despair that I was just like, I'm just going to do what I need to do to open this. So when you read a book and it tells you all the things you should do, I didn't do that. It was almost like a sense of urgency, like literally my life depended on it. So honestly, one of my jobs, I had earned quite a bit of money towards retirement, and I actually did use some of that to launch the practice. But again, for me, I was in a state of desperation, and so I was not as, I guess, strategic about some people. They'll do a moonlighting job for a couple years ahead of time, and for me, I just had planned on that job that I was in at the time to be that, and it was the complete opposite. And that job that I had taken had a loan reimbursement program, and that's one of the reasons why I had taken that job and was planning on being there for at least 5 years. And I just was like, I just can't, I won't survive this. I mean, I really felt like I wasn't going to survive that. So for me, unfortunately, I didn't do what most people would be recommended to do before they open a private practice. So again, which it is really helping me to have that financial advisor who knows the situation and the circumstances that surrounded me, kind of jumping into this a little sooner than I had planned on doing it. For me, because of what I took out and not having saved money ahead of time, I knew it would be 2 years for me before I could recoup that. So, and I will say this, one of my things that I would put in my book of what not to do, and I was told not to do it, was I used a consulting firm to help launch my practice. So that's a big chunk of that money. So I have mixed feelings about that because, to be honest, I was in really such a bad mental state and so overworked and exhausted that I don't know if I could have brought myself to do all the things that needed to be done on that checklist to get the practice started without somebody meeting with me weekly and giving me homework every week. I just was so down on myself and just felt so defeated because of how my plan to get in the future, 5 years later, starting a private practice had just fallen and collapsed around me. So on the one hand, that was a huge chunk of money. I mean, really, that's where the majority of my money went into that consulting firm. So on the one hand, I say, I know you don't have to have that. And I know we say that all the time in the direct primary care world. There's all these resources and free toolkits and that's wonderful. And most physicians can just go by that on their own and do it and not need the help that I got. But for me, it was more just emotionally. I just couldn't. It was just so much going on. And I just was like, I needed that. I needed somebody holding me accountable, that's what they do is they get people set to launch and all the ducks in a row in a short period of time. And again, I have mixed feelings about having done that. Like in the moment, that was what was right for me. Yes, it was a huge amount of money, and that's really where all my money went. I mean, I could tell you how much that was. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of money. So if I hadn't used that company, that would have saved me a ton of money. But I don't know if I would have actually taken all the steps to get to where I was to be able to open the practice. So it really just like we individualize our patients' care. Each person, you have to do what's right for you in that moment, for you and your family and your patients and your community in that moment. So for me, it was a huge financial chunk of money that I put into it, but it's the reason why I have a direct primary care practice today.
Quick question. At what point does DIY accounting stop being scrappy and start being expensive? If you're spending more than 5 hours a month on financial admin and unsure about quarterly taxes or guessing what you can safely pay yourself, that's not lean DPC. That's hidden overhead. So this month, as we focus on sustainable DPC economics, we partnered with Osprey CFO to build something practical. It's called What to Outsource First, a DPC finance decision tree. It walks you through real thresholds: when to outsource bookkeeping, when payroll becomes risky to manage alone, and when CFO level strategy actually makes sense. It's built specifically for the DPC membership model. Download it on the Learn page at mydpcstory.com and run your numbers against it, because sustainable doesn't mean doing everything yourself.
Well, I will say I will take your coulda, woulda, shoulda book and I will write my volume 2 to match yours, because if you don't have coulda, woulda, shouldas, that's not DVC. Oh my gosh, I swear it's not an easy thing, but it is just a more meaningful and fill in the other descriptors of what direct primary care is for a person. But I mean, I think that this is part of the journey. And I hear you saying if it hadn't been for that experience, you wouldn't have done DPC because that was your journey. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I will say that I'm really appreciative of you sharing that, because I feel this is where sometimes on the Facebook groups, it gets really, we're not going to talk about the things that are quote unquote things I wish I wouldn't have done. It's no, please talk about those, because those are real and those are all what we can laugh about later on after we get through it. But it's like, we lived through hell in fee for service also, and somehow we stuck with those jobs. That's the same type of thing. And coulda, woulda, shoulda, we wouldn't be where we are in terms of appreciating where we are unless we had gone through that hell. So I'm totally with you. And I want to ask here, because again, just seeing the name Victory behind you, how did you come up with your name and your brand of Victory Family Medicine?
Yeah, so I will say coming up with the name and coming up with the pricing, those were the two most difficult things for me. And I don't know if it's the same for everybody else, but so Victory Family Medicine was one of my first names that I had picked out, but it was one of probably several hundred. But it was one of the first ones I chose because Well, my name is Victoria, and I think about victory. I felt like opening my direct primary care practice or a practice in this area. I just felt victorious over the fee-for-service system that was not giving my patients the care and support that my patients needed and deserved. And also victory for me to be able to practice in a way that is best for my patients and for my well-being, both physically and mentally. And the wings are soaring above adversity in general, and the shield is protecting your health. Again, mind, body, spirit are all three is so important. So really that's why I came back to it. I am Greek, so there were all these Greek. I really wanted a Greek name, but this was thinking up names during COVID when so many wellness practices were opening, and I would come up with a name and I'd be like, okay, I think maybe I'm going to do this one. And it was already taken. So I was like, you know what? I think this is the name. And I'm going to tell you, this sounds so silly, but I was in my house still trying to figure out the name. And there was a reflection that a piece of furniture was making on the wall, and it looked just like my wings. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take that as a sign. I'm going to go back to the original and kept it Victory Family Medicine.
That's awesome. I'm such a fan. I'm such a fan. So when it comes to you then using this place of what victory represented for you, and then you bringing it to your community, did you have patients before you opened on day one, or did you teach your community about it after you opened?
Okay, so, and this made it a little bit difficult too. So I had this notion that I would open and have to probably start turn people away at the beginning. So I did not go straight from a family medicine practice into private practice. If I had done that, and of the 3,000 patients I had in my panel, a small portion of them follow me, that would have been ideal. But so when I worked in the fee for service model for a couple of organizations, and then the administrative burden had gotten so difficult that I actually went into occupational health for a couple of years, which was great in that when I would go home at night, I was not bringing anything home with me. I mean, it was long hours, but there wasn't a lot of administrative burden after hours. So obviously I wasn't doing primary care in that realm. And then I worked for a military based, or the VA, for a while. And of course, well, I say those patients don't follow me, but I do have some of those patients. But I had been outside of the traditional family medicine type practices for so many years that when I was in those practices, patients would always say, you need to open your own practice. You need to open your own practice. But this was way before that even entered my mind. And I was like, no, I will never do that. You need a whole department for this and department for that and department. I was like, I don't want to have to manage all these departments. So many years had passed between being in a family medicine practice that wasn't within the military or veteran system, that when I opened, like, my patients they didn't know where I was. So now that I'm 3 years in, patients have found me. I don't advertise. So patients find me mostly by word of mouth. And I do have social media pages, but I'm not active on them, which I should be, but I'm not. So other than my sign that's out along the road, which some patients find me that live around here in this area, they find me through the sign. It's just been word of mouth. I don't advertise on purpose because it's just me here. So the onboarding, I think getting up to 5 new patients a week is good for me, which is not always happening every week. But I'm saying, like, up to 5 new patients, I feel like I could handle and still take care of my existing patients. But I sort of am a little bit nervous about advertising and then having an influx of people because I don't know how I would handle that, to be honest. I'm not really sure. But that was really humbling, though, I will say, because I really did have this notion that I'm going to open, I'm going to have to turn people away. Well, no, it was far from that. So that was a learning experience. So I do go to the DPC Facebook page, which is I do get a lot of good insight from the posts on there. And I do see some people that are new to opening their practice, and they get a little bit frustrated with that. And I understand that. I can empathize. It was not that long ago for me, but it really does help to take a little bit more time if you have the time and get the patients that are the right fit for not just this model of practice, but for you and the way that you practice individually. So being able to do a more gradual organic growth is best long term, because retention it's helpful for not just for the patients for continuity of care, but for you as the physician, because that's how you get to know your patients. And of course, as you get new patients, you're kind of starting over at the beginning with that person. So yeah, it's been a slow organic growth, and I've enjoyed that, being able to do that.
Let me ask you here also, because we are a couple months out of open enrollment. Well, more than a couple, but when it comes to your community, did you see any churn because of, oh, now I have insurance and I have to leave your practice?
No, quite opposite. I had one family that did, but most of what I've been getting, and even right before we got on the podcast, I have 2 new inquiries with the practice. Most people, it's the opposite. They're very frustrated with their insurance company because of difficulty with access to care. So I've seen the opposite. Like, more people seem to reach out during open enrollment. And then even the first several months of the year, I feel like I get a little more inquiries into the practice in this model. I do have a micropractice, so I have under 130 patients. So I don't have a huge practice on purpose, but I have a lot of small business owners, and some of them have insurance, some of them don't. But the thing that I hear from these small business owners and some of the other employed folks are that I really like my physician when I'm doing meet and greets and we discuss it. And you always ask, well, what brings you to this model in my practice? Folks will be like, I really like my physician, and I've been with him for a while, but when I go to see that physician, I have to wait for an hour, and then I'm back there for a small amount of time, and then I feel like I don't get necessarily all the care that I need at that time, and I've just missed a half a day of work. So people say I have to take a half a day off whenever I go to see my doctor, or when I need to see my doctor, I can't get in to see that person. And I experienced that as a patient myself in the fee for service model, and was being I would see my doctor maybe once a year, but if something came up and I felt like I needed to see that person, if I would call, I would be told, well, Dr. So and so doesn't have an appointment for 2 weeks. And I'm like, for an acute care visit? Yeah, but you can go to urgent care. Well, then I'm paying a $50 copay to go to urgent care and see somebody that doesn't know me. So I think patients are getting frustrated, just like we physicians, when we're patients, feel the same way. So everybody's time is valuable. And direct primary care, this model allows us to honor the value of that time for people. And not just the patient's time, but the physician's time as well.
I totally agree with that. And I think about when you're speaking there, how like physicians and people in healthcare, there's this joke about we're the worst patients. And for sure, I expect that it's going to be a crap show in the fee-for-service office. I'll do anything in my ability to not go into the doctor. And then I was like, this is why you also should get a DPC doctor. And so I have a DPC doctor, but for that reason, I literally.
So do I
Yes.
now.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Great advice. Great
Yes.
advice there. Oh my God. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And like when I think about when I hear your panel size, and I mean, like, I love that you're intentional about it, as am I and my husband, because you have 3 kids under 15. I have 2 kids, or we have 2 kids under 10. That's a lot of work right there, especially as you mentioned, like activities, and that's just putting stuff lightly. But I'm wondering, what does your average week look like so that you can be less stretched thin, like we were talking about before?
I mean, I will tell you, I want to double the size eventually. I think that, well, again, I'm working with a financial advisor on that, but I could totally do that because my patients are very active on the secure, the HIPAA compliant messaging system, and I love that too. So there are some days that I have no patience in the office at all. I mean, I will have interacted with maybe 10 patients that day via the secure messaging, but there are like a couple days a week that I won't have anybody. And I'm always able to get folks in, if not same day, which 99% of the time I can get them in same day, certainly next day. So for me, I feel like there's no set number for me. Me personally, I want to make sure I'm never above a number where I can't accommodate getting people in same day or next day and still have that family interaction as well. So like tomorrow morning, my youngest has a school program that I'll be able to go to. I mean, it just so happened nobody had booked into the slots there, and the teachers didn't tell us until today what time it was at, which I'm so used to that now too, which is another reason why this model is really helpful, because not only am I able to pivot for my patients very quickly, but every once in a while, my patients are able to pivot for me really quickly. And we have that relationship to be able to do that. And I really appreciate that. I mean, the patient appreciates it. It's a mutual appreciation. So I think just being able to go to some of the kids' events is just amazing, because in the model that I came from, your standard fee for service model, again, patients would book their appointments 6 months out, and I would feel so guilty because I would never want that patient to have to reschedule after they had made accommodations in their lives to be able to come to that appointment. But then I was missing these events that were never going to happen again. I mean, those moments pass you by and then they're gone. I mean, so just being able to keep this panel size where I can be the best I can be for my patients, as well as the best I can be for my family, is really a blessing.
I will say that's so real when it comes to patients who are able to adjust for you. The weekend before we got the big storm in Arnold, I called up my 3 patients I was going to see that week, and I said, could you come in on Sunday? Because I don't want any one of us driving through the snow because I don't know how much we're going to get. And they're like, oh yeah, what time? And I was like, how about this time? And they're like, yeah. So I literally went in on a Sunday so that I would not have to go in on a Monday, and neither would they. And they were like, I love that you actually thought about this because like we weren't booked my husband and I weren't booked with patients that we couldn't move anybody around. And so I definitely will agree that that is a thing in DPC, that patients, for the culture of patients, is to take care of their doctor for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you are a DO, and so I'd love to ask here, because in terms of the time that you have to practice with your patients, how do you treat or how do you approach your visits differently because you have DO training and now you have more time than you did in your previous roles?
Right. So I love that first new patient visit because it is at least a 90-minute visit. And sometimes, depending on a person's history, it can spill over into another visit. But I really, and I've always loved this no matter where I practice, but that holistic approach to care is something I'm really passionate about. And one of my favorite parts of the new patient visit is the social history. And I start, and I mean, I want to know everything about everything. I mean, I start from where were you born and then take me from that time to where you're at now, because that is where I really get to know a patient. I mean, of course, we go over medical history, family history, surgical history, medications, allergies, all that. But the habits are important too. But that social history and just getting the story of that person's life really helps me take the best care I can of them. And so having the time to do that, I was able to get a little tiny bit of that in the fee for service model, but it was more just kind of glossing over it. Whereas this, I really get to deep dive into it. And it's just fascinating. Every time I finish a new patient visit, I will tell the patient, you should write a book. I feel like I say that to every single person because it is just amazing the experiences that people have had, both good and bad. But, it has formed them into what they are today. And it helps me better understand when we do have different medical issues come up, the best way for that patient for me to approach it. So I just love being able to have the time to do that and to really get to know my patients and really the inner workings of their family life and their work life and what brings them joy, what they enjoy doing, just really digging into that. I just really enjoy doing, and it seems to help me deliver more exceptional care than I was able to in the fee for service model.
And what outcomes have come of that because you have more exceptional care for your patients now?
Well, so knowing about people's past and where they're coming from, there are certain things that you'll do differently during an exam, or there are certain things that you already know has not worked for them in the past, or they're not willing to do for one reason or another. So maybe that's what's in the guidelines right now, what we should be doing, but that's not what's best for that patient. And so being able to really collaborate with the patient and having the time to do that and work with the patient as a team, this model allows you to do that. It gives you the freedom and the time to be able to do that. And it also, I mean, patients sense that you truly do want to do what's best for them individually, not just because that's what the guidelines say, but I want you as a patient to be living your best life physically and mentally. I want to help you get there. I want to give you the tools, and the tools that work for you may not be the tools that work for the patient I just saw ahead of you. So So being able to learn that, and patients sometimes want to try something outside of the typical guidelines, which if I can safely do that with them, I'm happy to do it. I mean, it takes more time. So it's more difficult to do that in the fee for service model. Plus, you're being tracked on certain measures in the fee for service model. And so you're sometimes advised not to go outside of those lines, even if going outside of those lines would be the best for that individual patient.
Definitely. And going back to how you love your first new patient visit and you do such a detailed history, do you have portions of how you're asking questions that help you in future visits with your patients, depending on their diagnoses?
Whenever somebody sends me a message through the Secure app, if it's a new symptom, I do have a certain set of questions depending on what their complaint is that it'll prompt me to say, okay, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here. If you can answer the below questions, then that will help me know what the next step should be for you. When I am putting their medical diagnoses into the system, uploading it in, I do always ask, like, when did whatever it was, when did the symptoms start? And then when did you receive that diagnosis? And what did you do from the time of the diagnosis to now? Oh yeah, definitely. Because sometimes they will have already tried A, B, C, and D. And if those didn't work, or if they had some type of side effect with those, I definitely don't want to repeat that inadvertently. So yeah, I definitely will look back at that before each visit or refer back to it. Yeah, I do that every day. So yes, I think being able to spend the time during that initial visit to really dig deep into each of those diagnoses and make notes to yourself about them is extremely beneficial. Yes, definitely.
Awesome. And when it comes to you being a micropractice doctor and you being physically the only one there in the office, do you have somebody or multiple people helping you virtually?
No. So the consulting company that I started with, initially I did have a virtual assistant, which I really didn't need, but initially I did because I was working part-time in occupational health and I was fearful of missing phone calls and then in turn missing new patient signups. So I did have a virtual assistant to field those calls while I was working my part-time job before I went full-time here. And I just felt like I lost some potential patients that way. I mean, I know there are a lot of direct primary care physicians that have amazing virtual assistants. So I wouldn't be opposed to trying that again. My panel size is such that I don't need that right now. The way, and this is true with every business owner, you learn to adapt and make adjustments as you go. So I have learned what works best for me is I do require an in-person meet and greet before I sign anybody up. I took the join now button off my website. I took the scheduling button off my website because somehow people were able to click the schedule a meet and greet and convert the appointment to like a sick visit that weren't even my patients. Anyway, I took that off. So I have a contact form. So everywhere on my website where it says contact us, it's supposed to route the person to the contact form. And that's how potential patients and vendors that want to meet with me fill that out. And I found that works best for me. I will just, like, I had a couple of new form submissions right before we got on the call and messaged them back. And then I help them schedule the meet and greet visit. And I will say, I know some people do meet and greet, some don't. I have found for me personally, that has been extremely beneficial for making sure that this is the right particular practice for that individual patient, because I can take them on a tour of the clinic and they can ask me their questions and I can set up the expectations for what it will look like if you are a patient of mine. And that's, they say, don't say you're available 24/7, because you're a human and you need to live your life too and sleep and eat. So that's one of the things I go over with the patient during the meet and greet. So there's no surprises. Oh, well, I can message her any time of day. Well, yes, but I would prefer it to be during these hours unless it's urgent. And I do understand how when something gets in your brain, you need to get it out while you're thinking about it. So I'm extremely excited that what was once not an option for patients on the Secure app is an option now for them to schedule, send a message. So when the patient signs up for the practice and downloads that particular app, I will show them, like, see under the text box, that clock. If you think of something and you're like, I just need to get it out of my head, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, go ahead and type it and schedule send it. Cause I totally get it. Cause I do that all the time on my end to patients. Like I am constantly thinking of things like, well, I forgot to tell so and so, whatever. So I'll type it up and then schedule send it to go out the next morning at 8:30. And I just tell people during the meet and greet, I mean, I try to be very, very respectful of your time too, because sometimes I'll be answering messages a little bit later in the day and I'll be like, okay, if they don't really need to know this answer at 7 o'clock at night, I'll schedule send it to go out tomorrow morning, because I don't want to interfere with their outside of work life either. So I just think that that mutual respect is helpful. But yeah, I don't feel like I need a virtual assistant yet, but that would certainly be something, like if I were to double my panel size tomorrow, I would I think that would be really helpful. My phone goes directly to voicemail, so when it's a prospective patient that really wants to join, or if it's one of the healthcare vendors that needs to get in touch with me, they'll leave a voicemail message and I will return their message. I'm notorious for, like, copying and pasting the phone number that I don't know into Google, and 9 times out of 10, it's some robocaller. Those are ones that don't leave voicemails, so I don't feel like right now I need one, but certainly it's something in the future that I would reconsider doing again.
Well, I just think it's so relevant to just the economics and sustainability of it all, because you are not wasting your time on answering these robocalls. Yes, you are looking them up, but at the same time, like, you can block them, because once you know it's a robocall, you can block them. But I just think about how you strategically have ways to direct the flow of your clinic and the flow of your people who are patients and people who are not patients, because I think that that is what that's what, to me, represents the space that you could have for more patients should you want them,
Right.
in that you've built in these boundaries for people to follow, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's something I learned with time as well. So it did not come immediately, but I again really setting those expectations up from the very beginning, even like during the meet and greet, I've noticed has been very, very helpful, because like you said, patients are very respectful of your time and they appreciate the effort that you're putting in. And I think it's only fair for them to understand too. Oh, if they don't know that you're getting every single message, no matter what time of day it is, well, then that would be kind of my fault for not letting them know that. So for me, I actually keep that app on 24/7. I don't ever turn it off. So, and I tell patients that, like, and then this is the only app on my phone that I keep on 24/7. So if you do message me and it's not during regular hours, please know it is going to wake me or my husband up if it's in the middle of the night. And so I think just letting people know ahead of time. And most people, unless they're coming from out of state and they've had another direct primary care practice they've been with, most people, this is very unfamiliar territory.
Definitely. And when it comes to time and where you put time, I'm wondering, when you see patients, do you have dedicated time for things like home visits or just for doing admin stuff? Do you segment your day even if you have patients or if you don't?
So I have not done that up to this point. Again, if my practice were to double tomorrow, then yes, definitely I would. I do let my patients self-schedule their appointments. I know that's another thing that can be a little bit difficult if a patient schedules an 8:30 appointment tomorrow and then the next one's not till 4:30. And I know some direct primary care physicians they don't want that. And I get that. But I guess for me, I always have administrative stuff to catch up on as far as the business side. I'm always learning about the business side, or, I'll be doing a newsletter for a patient or something. So, or I'll run home and wash the linens. So for me, I have not done that yet, but if I weren't a micro practice and if I had a full panel where I was actually coming in every day to see patients, then most definitely I would. Yeah. And if I were to do that, I probably would. Like for me, I have learned I usually block out Monday mornings for administrative time because I find that and this I didn't learn until I had been in practice for a couple of years, but a lot of people think of things Monday morning, and I just noticed I would get a lot of messages on Monday morning. So if I was also seeing patients all morning too, face to face, it was getting a little bit overwhelming. So what I did is I block out the first couple hours of every Monday. And that way, when I get that influx of messages, I can actually go ahead and take care of those. And then when my first patient appointment starts, I don't feel like I'm starting behind. So that has been helpful. I think if I did have a full panel, though, I would think 1 or 2 half days of admin would be beneficial. And that way you can batch your messages. That is one thing and this is my choice because I leave that app on all the time. I I do kind of feel like I'm always on, but that's my choice. And I can change that if I decide to. But I will say I am a control freak. So I feel some folks, they'll batch their messages where they turn the app off and only turn it on a couple times a day. But I am so controlling. I would be so stressed about, I wonder what messages I'm getting and what I need to do. So for me and my personality and the size of my practice right now, I choose to be able to at least glance at them as they come across. And that way, know, okay, this is going to take a little bit more of my time. So I know that after lunch today, I'm going to need to devote a little bit of that time to this message that this patient needs me for. So there's no right way to do it or wrong way. And it really does change with time. I mean, and I think any small business owner, not just direct primary care physicians, but I think any small business owner will tell you that. I mean, you kind of adapt to whatever is best for you and your business and for your clients slash patients. So it will change. I mean, it's often changing.
And I think it's a good exercise. Just hearing you talk, I think about that my husband and I, we call it rolling the dice. It's okay, let's roll the dice and let's dive down this rabbit hole of, if we did it this way, what would it look like? What are the pros and cons? And for us, it's worked really well to be less anxiety ridden from, we should do this, we should do that. It's just, no, let's just roll the dice and pretend we did. So I think it's a good exercise, especially if you're looking to hire a virtual assistant like you're talking about. If I did have this many patients, could I? Yeah, it backs up so much what you're saying in that there's no wrong way and there's no right way. There's ways to learn from what we do. This has been so helpful to hear how you're doing things as a micropractice physician. But also, I love that you've mentioned things like you were aware that having a financial person is going to be very helpful for you. Thank you so much, Dr. Leventis-Shew, for sharing today.
Well, thank you. Like I said, you and your podcast are one of the things that gave me the courage and the knowledge and the strength to become a small business owner and open a direct primary care practice. So I thank you.
Thanks for being here for this episode of My DPC Story. Whether you stumbled across DPC for the first time today or you've been in practice for years, these stories are here for you, wherever you are in your DPC journey. And that's exactly how the Start Here page at mydpcstory.com is built now. It meets you where you are. New to DPC and learning the fundamentals? There's a path for that. Already practicing or in the planning stages and looking for practical tools? There's a path for that too. Ready to go deeper? That's covered. Head to the Start Here page at mydpcstory.com and find your starting point. If you have a question or challenge you want to hear addressed on the show, go to the contact page at mydpcstory.com and leave me a voice message. And if this episode moved you, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best ways to help other physicians find these stories when they need them the most. For commercial-free episodes and extended conversations, check out our Patreon. There's a free tier and a paid tier, and both help keep the show going. Follow us on socials at MyDPCStory and find everything from episodes, free resources, the DPC Toolkit magazine, and more at mydpcstory.com. My DPC Story is created and hosted by me, Marielle Concepcion. A huge thank you to the team that makes this show possible. Chief Growth Officer, Kira Hanselman, Head of Marketing and Strategy, Natalia Highland, and Chief Operational Officer, Alexandra Goebel. We are all in your corner. Until next time, this is Marielle Concepcion.